Hey guys, happy Thursday. We're going to read chapters 25 and 26 today. The streets and the houses all looked the same to Brody, dull and round under a blanket of snow. The world was quiet, the night was still. All those living people huddled in all those cozy houses under all that falling snow. It was peaceful. But Brody wasn't peaceful. Brody was running, and he wasn't looking at cozy houses or falling snow. As he ran, his head swiveled, looking in windows for the familiar silhouettes of the boy he loved or the monster that hunted him. He looked in driveways and down side streets for a beat-up car that leaked oil and reeked of cigarette smoke. Brody's heroic heart strained and sang and snarled. It had fought through life and death and day and night and good and evil to find his boy, to save his boy, and time was running out. He'd spent his soul down to its last noble lights. He could feel them circling him, precious and small and dwindling. They would be gone, and then hope would be gone, and then he would be gone. But they weren't gone yet. So neither was hope, and neither was he. If he was fading to blackness, he was doing it with his eyes wide open and full of light. He ran through the streets, heart bursting and eyes searching and soul burning. And Brody, he found nothing. Cars passed him, but they weren't the monsters. Shadows moved behind drawn curtains, but they weren't Aiden's. He eyed parked cars as he passed them, but they were cold and empty and covered in snow. He was turning a corner, drumming his paws through the snow, when he felt the first soul light leave him. He'd spent it jumping down from the train and sniffing at the cars and running through the gathering snow. He'd left no tracks in the snow, but he'd been touching the world all the same, and that had taken its toll. There was a feeling of pinching loss. His paws stumbled. He kept his footing, but he faltered. His pace slowed. If he'd had lungs that breathed, he would have gasped and moaned. He slowed to a stop. He closed his eyes and then opened them again. He was at a crossroads. Two roads, each lined with lit-up houses, receded away in four different directions. It was almost like seeing the bigger truth. All those people, all those dogs and cats and birds and souls and lives and loves and problems and promises and dreams and despairs, all sparkling like a brilliant blanket of lights under a winter sky. Brody sat in the snow. He looked up at the snow-pocked sky. If there was a moon, it hid behind clouds. He knew that if he howled, it would shine, and the angel who was not an angel would come for him. But he knew he wouldn't howl. The angel knew it too. He looked around himself at all the houses in all directions. Dozens of houses. If he picked any direction except the right one, he would run out of soul before he ran out of road, and his boy would be lost. But there was no way of knowing. No way to tell which direction to go. His eyes dropped hopelessly to the pure white snow of the street. Except that it wasn't pure white. Right there, between his ghostly paws, there was something in the snow. Something very dark and very small, but very much not pure white snow. It was black and dirty and dribbly. It was oil. One single drop of oil. It had, Brody somehow knew all in an instant, dripped from a car with a cardboard window and a monster behind the wheel. Snow fell thick around them, burying all the world in quiet hiding whiteness. But somehow, as the flakes fell everywhere and on everything, none of them had fallen on that dirty black drop. The snow fell all around it, but it had not been hidden or lost or buried. It was just almost a miracle. Brody rose to his feet. It was a trail to the monster, a trail to his boy. Brody's two soul lights glowed brighter. He set off in a sprint. Chapter 26. The black drops led him down one street, and then in a sharp turn to another. Brody kept his head down, his eyes on the snow, not wanting to miss a drop, not wanting to lose the trail. He knew he didn't have enough soul to lose the trail and find it again. He had one chance. The snow stopped falling as he ran, the flood of flakes dwindling down to nothing. Now all the night was a waiting stillness. It was shadows and silence. It was a dog searching. It was a boy lost. It was an angel who was not an angel watching. It was a soul undaunted but fading. And then it was a monster. The car was parked in darkness, far away from the nearest streetlight, beneath the darker shadows of a snow-curtained tree. The engine was off, the windows closed, inside the dark. Dark, that is, except for a single red glow of a cigarette. Brody stopped running, his hackles raised, his lip lifted, his teeth unsheathed. He stepped forward right up to the car and looked through the grimy window to the man inside. The monster sat wreathed in smoke. He brought a bottle to his lips and gulped a drink. Even in the cold metal of the door, Brody heard the sloppy swallow. But Brody didn't look at the cigarette or the bottle. He watched the monster's eyes. Because the monster's eyes, they never wavered. They didn't glance in the rearview mirror or wander around the night. Brody followed the monster's gaze. The house was white. It was 2 stories tall. It had a covered front porch and a basketball hoop over the driveway. The sidewalk in front of it and the little pathway and the front door were neatly shoveled. The porch light was on. There was only one reason the monster would be watching that house. Brody walked without thinking across the street. He walked down the sidewalk and then up the shoveled path toward the front door. Brody, for the first time in a long time, forgot about the monster and his soul and Darkly and Patsy and even Tuck. Brody's only thought was on the boy he knew was inside the White House with the Christmas lights. He walked up the porch steps. The wood didn't creak under the weight of his body because he had no body, had no weight. He passed without pausing through the front door. Brody found himself standing in an entryway. The floor was dark, shiny wood. To his right, a man and a woman were watching the flickering light of a TV screen. In front of Brody was a staircase, leading up. Somehow, Brody knew. He knew where to go. He walked up the stairs. He didn't race, but his step was steady and sure. Away and back. At the top of the stairs was a hallway. In the hallway were 3 doors. One was open. Another was open too, though Brody saw a sink and a mirror on the edge of a bathtub. The third door was closed. Brody paused, but not with uncertainty. He paused with certainty. Finally, after miles of mayhem and doubts and despair, Brody knew where to go. He walked up to the third door, the closed one. Brody walked through it. The room on the other side was dark. There was a window looking out on the street, some pictures on the wall. Who cares? Who cares about any of that? Not Brody, because in the room was a bed, and in the bed was a boy, and in the bed was the boy whose smile held all the happiness the world could hope for. In the bed was the boy whose arms hugged with a fierceness that could burn away all of your shivers and all of your trembles. In the bed was a boy who hid under picnic tables in the rain and told you all was going to be okay. In the bed was a boy who would share a thin blanket on a cold night and shiver to sleep together with you and give you the only best of dreams. In the bed was a boy who could blink away his own tears and kiss you on the nose because he knew you couldn't stand to see him sad. In the bed was a boy who'd do anything, anything, anything for. In the bed was a boy who fought monsters away to keep you safe. In the bed was a boy you'd trade your soul for. In the bed was Brody's boy. In the bed was Aiden. Brody stepped up to the bed. Brody didn't have eyes to cry. He didn't have a voice to sing. He didn't have feet to dance. But Brody's soul, oh, Brody's soul, it was a bright one. Believe me, if you'd been there when Brody saw his boy again, you would have to look away, his soul burned so bright. Aiden was asleep. His eyes were closed, his mouth barely open. His chest rose and fell. He looked warm. He looked safe. One arm was flung out from the blankets. It stretched across the pillow, and his hand lay open and limp. It was reaching toward the little table that sat beside his bed. On the table was a single picture. In the picture was a boy and his dog. This boy and this dog. In the picture was everything. Every part of Brody's heart broke. Every part of Brody's heart rose up from the ashes into song. Words, there aren't any. Go ahead, find your soul's one true perfect love, and then die, and lose them forever, and then find them again. Then you'll see. Then you'll know how Brody felt, standing in the dark room, looking at that brave and beautiful boy. I don't know what Brody would have done next. I don't know if he would have barked or jumped up to the bed or stood in the darkness, looking at his beautiful boy forever. I don't know. Because whatever Brody would have done next was lost. Stolen by a sound that killed his wag and his tail and closed his mouth tight shut and snapped his head back toward the window. Because standing there by his sound asleep boy, Brody heard the ugly, unmistakable sound of a car door slamming shut across the street. We'll start the next chapter too. Chapter 27, because we're kind of almost done. In the bed lay a sleeping boy. Downstairs, a laughing man and woman. Outside, a monster was coming. Brody was the only voice who knew, and Brody had no voice. He had 2 fragile soul lights on their way to a shadow. But Brody, he still had his heart. He ran to the window. Yes, there was the monster standing beside his car in the darkness. His bottle was gone. Even from the distance, Brody could tell his shake was gone. His terrible, cold calm was there. The monster's teeth were sharpened. His claws were out. He stepped away from the car across the snow-shrouded street, toward the White House, the Christmas lights, toward Aiden. No, Brody thought to himself, not again, not ever. Brody waited just long enough for one last look at his boy. His boy there sleeping and breathing and dreaming, his arm outstretched toward a picture of them both, smiling in the sunshine. One look. One look after all that seeking and searching. And then, well, Brody ran, away from his boy toward the monster. Again. He ran from the bed and through the door and down the stairs. He was on his way out. He, a bodiless ghost dog, could do nothing against the monster. But on a couch in the next room were a man and a woman. He ran into the room with the TV, ran in barking and growling and hopping high on his paws. The woman yawned. Brody barked louder and fiercer. Listen, he shouted. Listen, he's coming. He's right outside. The man and woman didn't look. They didn't do anything. Brody ran frantically to the window. He jumped his front paws up on the sill and stuck his head through the curtain and peered out through the darkness. The monster was still coming. He was across the street now, standing on the sidewalk one house away. He took one last pull on his cigarette, burning the end to a bright red, angry eye, and then flicked it away in a snowbank. Brody looked back at the couple on the couch. How could he get their attention? How could he make them look out the window? The curtain fluttered in front of his eyes, and he shook his head impatiently to see past it. He froze. The curtain. Brody glanced at his last two soul lights, but just for a moment. Then he focused all of his energy, all of his power, all of his soul on making his teeth reel, on giving his mouth a bite. He opened his jaws. He surged one last push of concentration into making his teeth reel, and then bit down on the edge of the curtain, just like Tuck biting a French fry. He felt it. Brody didn't wait to savor it. As soon as he felt the curtain tighten his grip, he yanked with all and everything that he had. There was a rip and a snap, and the curtain was tumbling along with its metal rod down from above the window, clattering to the floor with a perfect noisy crash. The woman cried out. The man jumped up. What in the world? He said. He was startled, breathing fast. Brody danced before him, tail wagging. What happened? I don't know. Must have been loose or something. That was weird. Man, that scared the heck out of me, he chuckled. He sat back down on the couch. Brody's mouth dropped open. No, he shouted, no! It hadn't worked. But then, well, the woman asked, well, what? You're not just going to leave it like that, are you? Oh, you want me to put it back up? Of course. Oh my goodness, you're the laziest man alive. All right, the man laughed. Didn't seem like an emergency, but if the lady insists. Yes, Brody thought, it is an emergency. Look. The man stooped to pick up the curtain and stood with his hands. Brody watched every move. Outside, look outside. As the man's hands worked on sliding the curtain back onto the metal rod, his eyes strayed carelessly out the window. He looked up the street away from the monster. He focused. He looked up at the sky. Looks like more snow. Then, his eyes wandered the other way, down the street. Brody saw them squint. Focus. Sharpen. He saw a small smile slip from the man's mouth. Honey, he said. They said Aiden's dad was tall, right? Big guy with the beard? Yeah, why? The man didn't answer. His eyes darted across the street to the car parked in the shadows. What kind of car did they say he drove? An old silver station wagon, I think. Missing a window. Her voice was getting serious. The man dropped the curtain to the floor. Call the police, he said, his voice tight. What? Is he? Yes. The man strode out to the entryway. There was the click of a door being locked. The woman had already grabbed the phone from her couch and was tapping urgently on the screen. Brody had seen enough. They would do what they could now that he had to do what they could. The police would be on their way, but the monster was already here. Brody had to stop them. And that's the end. And we should be able to finish tomorrow. All right. Have an awesome day, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye, guys.